I need you to picture something for me. A courtroom in Charlotte, North Carolina. 9:47 in the morning. The kind of late October day where the sun comes through the windows but doesn't warm anything. I'm sitting at the plaintiff's table in a navy blue suit I bought specifically for this day. My hands are folded on top of a manila folder. I am completely still. Across the room, my husband of 11 years, Darnell Marcus Carver, is leaning over to whisper something to his attorney. Then he turns and looks directly at me, and he smiles. That big, easy, I already won smile that I used to love. Then he says it, loud enough for the whole room to hear.
She has nothing. She is nothing.
I looked down at my watch, 9:47. I thought right on schedule. Because 11 months ago, Darnell smashed my phone against our kitchen floor to silence me. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that I had already pressed send. Drop your location and your local time in the comments right now. I want to know who's here with me for this one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it before this story is over. Trust me, you are going to want to hear every single second of what happens next. Now let me take you back, all the way back to where this really started. My name is Simone Elaine Carver. I'm 38 years old, and for 11 years, I believed that the life I was building was real. I grew up in Charlotte, born and raised in the West End, the kind of neighborhood where everybody knew your grandmother's name and your business at the same time. My mama worked double shifts at Carolina's Medical Center for 22 years, so I could go to UNC Charlotte and not come out drowning in debt. I didn't take that lightly, not for a single day. I graduated with a degree in accounting and a minor in finance, got my CPA license at 24. By 30, I was a senior financial compliance analyst at Meridian Advisory Group, one of the most respected independent audit firms in the Southeast. My job in the simplest terms was to find what didn't add up. Discrepancies in financial records, irregularities in loan documentation, signatures that didn't match, numbers that didn't align. I was good at it. Real good. My colleagues used to joke that I had a photographic memory for figures. Jerry Hutchins, one of our senior accountants, a quiet man in his late 50s who wore the same style of brown cardigan every single day, once told me, "Simone, you see things in numbers that most people can't even see in faces." I took that as the highest compliment anyone had ever paid me. That was my professional life, precise, methodical, built on the understanding that the truth always lives in the details. My personal life, I told myself, was the same. Darnell and I lived in a 2,400 square foot house on Briar Creek Road, brick front 2-car garage, the big oak tree in the backyard that our daughter Maya had claimed as her personal headquarters since she was 5 years old. It was a good house, a real house. The kind of house I had sketched in the margins of my notebooks when I was 12 years old and had no business dreaming that big. I want to be clear about something I paid for most of it. Not because Darnell didn't work, he did at least on paper. He was a regional sales director for a mid-sized logistics company out of Raleigh. Good title, decent salary. But his income was inconsistent. Commission-based, he always said, good months and bad months. So early on in our marriage, we made an agreement my salary covered the mortgage and the household accounts, his, covered the extras. Vacations, dinners out. The kind of things that made life feel like more than just survival. That arrangement made sense in year 2. By year 8, I barely remembered how it started. What I do remember is this. Every time I got a promotion, every time my name showed up in a company announcement, or I came home with a bonus check, Darnell would smile, but the smile never quite reached his eyes. The first time I noticed it was 2019 when I was promoted to senior analyst. I came home with a bottle of champagne, and my hands were still shaking from excitement. Darnell hugged me.
Just don't go getting too big for your britches, babe.
I laughed it off. I thought he was joking. I kept laughing it off for 3 more years. Our daughter Maya was 9 years old at the time all of this started unraveling. She is the best thing I have ever done with my life, full stop, no contest, no close second. She had her father's smile and my stubbornness, which meant she was both charming and absolutely immovable when she'd made up her mind about something. She wanted to be a marine biologist. She had a poster of the ocean on her ceiling, so it was the last thing she saw before she closed her eyes every night. She was also, as it turned out, paying far more attention to what was happening in our house than either of us realized. My best friend Renee Okafor had been in my life since our freshman year at UNC Charlotte. We met in a study group for Introduction to Business Law, and she talked so fast and thought so clearly that I decided immediately she was going to be either my best friend or my academic rival. She became both briefly and then just the first one permanently. By the time this story takes place, Renee was a family law attorney with her own practice in uptown Charlotte. She had seen the inside of more broken marriages than she cared to count. She'd been gently diplomatically trying to tell me something was wrong with mine for about 2 years before I was ready to hear it. I wasn't ready because Darnell was, and I need you to understand this genuinely magnetic when he wanted to be. He remembered the names of every server at every restaurant we'd ever been to. He could walk into a room of strangers and leave with 3 new friends. My mother adored him. My aunties adored him. At church, people would stop him just to shake his hand. That charm was real. I wasn't imagining it. It just wasn't the whole picture. The first crack I noticed, the very first one, happened on a Thursday evening in early September. Darnell had been on a 3-day business trip to Atlanta. At least that's what he said. When he came home, I was in the kitchen finishing up dinner, and Maya was at the table doing homework. He kissed me on the cheek, ruffled Maya's hair, went upstairs to change. Normal, completely normal. Except that when I carried his laptop bag upstairs an hour later, I noticed his phone, his main phone, sitting on the nightstand. And next to it, half tucked under his wallet, was a second phone. Black, older model. I'd never seen it before. I stood there for a moment. He came out of the bathroom and saw me looking at it. Not touching it, just looking.
Oh, that
He said, completely easy, completely unbothered.
company issued it for the new client accounts. You know how they are about keeping business lines separate.
He picked it up, slid it into his nightstand drawer, and that was that. I went back downstairs. I finished setting the table. I called Maya in for dinner. But something had shifted barely, almost imperceptibly, the way a floor shifts under your feet in an old house. You're not sure if you felt it or imagined it. You keep walking. You tell yourself it's nothing. That night, I lay in the dark next to Darnell while he slept, and I thought about something Jerry had said to me at lunch 3 weeks earlier, almost as an aside, almost like he wasn't sure he should be saying it at all. Hey, random question. You know anything about a Darnell Carver associated with some LLC out of Georgia? I pulled a filing cross-reference last week, and your name showed up in it too. Figured he must have told you. I'd told Jerry I'd look into it. I hadn't looked into it yet. Lying there in the dark listening to Darnell breathe, I decided that tomorrow I would. Let me tell you about the man I fell in love with, because if I skip that part, none of the rest of this makes sense. I met Darnell Marcus Carver at a rooftop birthday party in Noda on a Saturday night in late June 12 years ago. He was wearing a white linen shirt and laughing at something somebody said, and the laugh was so genuine, so completely unself-conscious that I noticed him before he ever noticed me. That almost never happened to me. I was usually the one who had to be noticed first. He found me at the drink table an hour later. Didn't use a line.
You've been watching people all night like you're taking notes. I said,
Maybe I am.
He said, what's your conclusion so far?
And we talked for 4 hours straight. About everything, about nothing, about the kind of things you normally save for people you've known for years. He proposed 14 months later at Forsyth Park in Savannah, down on one knee in the middle of a Saturday morning, tourists walking past Maya's aunt, crying louder than I was. We honeymooned in Charleston. We came home and spent the first 3 years of our marriage building something that felt from the inside like exactly what I had always wanted. Sunday mornings were our thing. He'd make his grandmother's biscuit recipe, the one she'd written on an index card that he kept folded in his wallet, and I'd make the eggs, and we'd sit at the kitchen table and read the news on our tablets and not say much. And it was enough. More than enough. Maya came along in year 2, and Sunday mornings expanded to include a small person who put syrup on everything and had opinions about every cartoon ever made. Those mornings were real. I need you to know that. They weren't a performance. Whatever Darnell became, whatever he had already been becoming without my knowledge, those Sunday mornings were real. But real things can be used as cover, and I didn't understand that yet. The distance started gradually. The way all slow erosion starts so incremental, you mistake it for the natural settling of things. In year 8, the business trips to Atlanta became more frequent. Once a month, then twice, then sometimes 3 times in 6 weeks. His explanation was always reasonable new regional accounts, a major distribution client. He was trying to close the kind of opportunity that didn't come twice. I believed him because the explanation fit the man I knew. Darnell was ambitious. Darnell worked hard. Darnell had always talked about breaking into the Southeast logistics market in a serious way. The second unusual thing I noticed, and this one was harder to dismiss than the new phone, happened on a Tuesday in early October. I was running late for work and grabbed Darnell's jacket by mistake. We both had black wool coats, nearly identical, hanging on the same hook by the door. I realized it was his when I reached into the pocket for my parking pass and found a folded piece of paper instead. A hotel receipt, the Lowe's Atlanta Hotel, 2 nights, dated 3 weeks earlier. I stopped on the front porch. Maya was already in the car. I looked at the receipt again. 3 weeks earlier, Darnell had told me he was in Houston for a supply chain conference. I remembered it specifically because he'd called me from what he said was the hotel bar, and I could hear music in the background, and I'd teased him about networking at 10 o'clock at night. I stood on that porch for a long moment. Then Maya honked the horn. She'd figured out how to reach the steering wheel from the back seat and thought it was hilarious, and I folded the receipt, put it in my own pocket, and drove her to school. That evening, I asked Darnell about it, casually, over dinner. I slid the receipt across the table. He looked at it, picked it up, didn't even blink.
Babe, that's from back in July. I had a client meeting in Atlanta before the Houston trip. Must have left it in that jacket.
He handed it back to me like it was a grocery list.
You good?
He asked, already reaching for his phone. I said yes. I said I was good, but I am a compliance analyst. My entire professional existence is built on the understanding that when a document doesn't match the timeline, you do not move on until you understand why. I went to my home office that night and I pulled up our joint credit card statement, the one Darnell managed, but that I had full access to. I searched for Houston, hotel charges, conference registration. The Houston Marriott charge was there, October 4th through 6th. The Lowe's Atlanta charge was also there, October 4th through 5th. Same dates, 2 different cities, 2 different hotel charges. I sat with that for a very long time. The next day at work, I tracked down Jerry Hutchins in the break room. I told him I wanted to follow up on what he'd mentioned about the LLC filing. Jerry set down his coffee, glanced at the door. Then he said carefully, I probably shouldn't have brought it up the way I did. But yeah, there's a filing in the Georgia Secretary of State database, LLC called SCM Holdings. Your name is listed as a member. Darnell's name is on it too. I figured it was some kind of investment vehicle he'd set up and looped you in on. He didn't loop me in, I said. Jerry went very still. He didn't mention it at all, I said. That night, after Maya was asleep and Darnell was watching the game in the living room, I opened my laptop at the kitchen table. Georgia Secretary of State website, business search, SCM Holdings LLC. The filing came up immediately. Date of formation, March 2021. Registered agent, a law firm in Marietta, Georgia I had never heard of. Members listed Darnell M. Carver and Simone E. Carver. My name, my signature on the operating agreement. I enlarged the signature page on my screen and stared at it for a long time. The signature looked like mine. It had the right loops, the right slant. But the letter E in Elaine, the way I've written my middle initial since I was 15 years old with a specific downward curl on the bottom bar, was wrong. Close, but wrong. Someone had practiced my signature, had gotten very close, but not close enough for the person who had been writing it her entire life. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I thought they would shake. Instead, something cold and very focused settled into my chest. The same feeling I got when I found a discrepancy in a multi-million-dollar audit. And I knew, before I'd even pulled the supporting documents, that what I was looking at was not a mistake. I closed the laptop, walked into the living room, stood in the doorway. Darnell was on the couch, feet up, completely relaxed. He glanced over at me.
You okay?
Fine, I said, just tired. I went upstairs. I lay in bed. And I thought about the signature, about Atlanta and Houston on the same dates, about the second phone in the nightstand drawer. And then I thought about something else, something Renee had said to me 6 months ago over dinner, in that careful, measured way she had when she was trying not to alarm me.
I'm not saying anything is wrong, Simone. I'm just saying you should know where all your financial documents are, all of them, just in case.
Just in case. I reached for my own phone, texted Renee, "Are you free tomorrow, not as my friend, as my attorney?"
I've been waiting for that text. Yes, come to the office, 9 a.m.
I set the phone face down on the nightstand, closed my eyes. The floor had shifted again. This time I was sure I hadn't imagined it. Renee's office was on the 14th floor of a building on South Tryon Street with a view of uptown Charlotte that on a clear morning looked like a postcard. I had been to that office dozens of times over the years for lunch, for after-work drinks once to drop off a birthday cake I'd baked at 11 o'clock at night, because that's the kind of friendship we had. That morning, walking in with a folder of printed documents under my arm felt entirely different. Renee met me at the door herself. No small talk. She took one look at my face, closed the office door behind us, and said,
"Show me everything."
I laid it out on her conference table. The Georgia SOS filing for SCM Holdings. The signature page with the E in a lane that was almost right, but not quite. The credit card statement showing Atlanta and Houston on the same dates. Screenshots of the hotel receipt. Everything I had. Renee went through it methodically the same way I would have gone through a financial audit. Slowly, carefully, without reacting until she had the full picture. When she finished, she looked up.
"The signature,"
she said.
"You're certain it's not yours?"
"I've written my name the same way since I was 15, I said. "That E hasn't changed in 23 years. She nodded.
Okay. Then what you're looking at, if this company was formed without your knowledge and your signature was replicated on the founding documents, is identity fraud, potentially at the federal level depending on what the company has been used for.
I heard the words. I understood them intellectually. But hearing them said out loud in a law office by my best friend, who was now speaking to me in her attorney voice that landed differently than reading a statute on a screen. "I need to know what the company has been used for," I said.
"So do I," Renee said. "Give me a few days."
I went home. I went to work. I made Maya's lunches and helped her with her science project about coral reefs and sat across the dinner table from Darnell every night and said almost nothing. On the third evening, I did something I had not done in 11 years of marriage. I found the spare key. Early in our relationship, year 2, maybe year 3, Darnell had given me a spare key to everything. His car, his gym locker, the small fireproof lockbox he kept in the closet for important documents. It was a gesture of openness, he said.
No secrets between us, baby.
Over the years, I'd used the keys so rarely that I'd moved them to the back of my jewelry drawer and mostly forgotten they existed. I found the lockbox key on a Wednesday afternoon while Darnell was at the gym and Maya was at her after-school program. The lockbox was on the top shelf of his closet behind a stack of shoe boxes. I lifted it down, opened it. There were the things I expected: his passport, our car titles, the original deed to the house. And then there was a manila folder I had never seen before. Thick, rubber banded shut. I had maybe 20 minutes before Darnell got back. I took the folder to the kitchen table, opened it. The first page was a cover sheet from a law firm, Aldridge and Price LLC, Marietta, Georgia. Below the firm name, a document title, Loan Agreement SCM Holdings, LLC, $312,000. I turned to the signature page. Personal guarantor Simone E. Carver. The same wrong E. My hands finally started shaking. Just slightly. Just enough that I noticed. I didn't have time to read the full document. I photographed every page, 17 pages, with my phone. Put the folder back. Put the lockbox back. Was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of water when I heard the garage door open 12 minutes later. That night, I sent the photographs to Renee. Her response at 11:47 p.m. was 4 words.
Call me in the morning.
I didn't sleep. Renee called at 7:15 a.m. before I'd even gotten Maya up for school. Her voice was controlled, the voice she used in depositions. I'd heard it before, but underneath it was something tighter.
The loan was funded, she said. All $312,000. Drawn down in 4 installments between August and November of last year. Simone, as the personal guarantor on this document, if SCM Holdings defaults, the lender can come after you directly. Your personal assets, your salary, potentially the house.
The kitchen felt very small suddenly. Who's the lender? I asked.
Meridian Capital Partners, she said. A private lending firm out of Atlanta.
I set my coffee mug down very carefully. Meridian Capital Partners. I knew that name. It was affiliated distantly through a network of parent companies with Meridian Advisory Group, the firm where I worked. The firm where I spent 8 hours a day examining loan documentation for irregularities. The irony of that was so precise it felt almost surgical. That evening, I confronted Darnell. I waited until Maya was upstairs, headphones on video call with her school friends. Then I sat down at the kitchen table across from him, and I put my phone face up between us, open to the photograph of the loan agreement signature page. I watched his eyes go to it. He said nothing for a moment.
Where did you get that?
Not a question. A statement. Flat and cold in a way I had not heard from him before. It doesn't matter where I got it, I said. What matters is that my name is on a $300,000 loan that I never signed. Something moved across his face fast like a cloud shadow, and then it was gone, replaced by something else. Something harder.
You signed it, he said. You just don't remember. I showed you that paperwork 2 years ago.
Darnell.
You were stressed about a work deadline. You signed a stack of documents I brought home. That was one of them.
I have never in my life signed a document without reading it first. He stood up, slowly, the way he did when he was deciding how to handle something rather than reacting to it.
You know what your problem is?
He said. His voice had changed again, lighter now, almost amused, which was somehow worse than the coldness.
You sit at that job all day looking for problems in other people's paperwork, and you come home and you do the same thing to your own marriage.
He looked me up and down, one long, deliberate look, and then he said it.
You think your little spreadsheets make you something special? You're nothing but a calculator in a dress.
The air in the room changed. 11 years. 11 years, and he had never spoken to me like that. The words landed the way a slap lands, not just the pain of it, but the shock that the hand was even raised. I didn't respond. I kept my face still. I picked up my phone. I stood up from the table. We're done talking about this tonight, I said. He laughed short dismissive and walked out of the kitchen. I stood there for a moment after he left. Then I went to my home office, closed the door, and called Renee. He gaslighted me, I told her. He said I signed it and forgot. And then he said, I stopped, took a breath. He talked to me like I was nothing. Renee was quiet for a beat.
Simone, listen to me. Tomorrow, I want you to pull every account statement you have access to. Joint account savings, everything. Don't move anything yet. Just look.
I pulled them that night. The joint savings account, $47,000 that we had built over 4 years for Maya's college fund, had been quietly, methodically drained. Small withdrawals, never more than $2,000 at a time, spread across 14 months so that no single transaction would trigger a flag. It was, I had to acknowledge with a kind of nauseated professional respect, exactly how I would have told someone to hide financial fraud if they'd asked me how. I sat at my desk in the dark for a long time. Then I picked up my phone, my work phone, the one Darnell didn't know the number to, and I called Renee back. There's more, I said. A lot more. Renee confirmed what I already knew in my bones. The $47,000 was gone. 14 months of carefully timed withdrawals, $1,800, here $2,200. They're always below the threshold that would trigger an automatic review. Whoever had structured those withdrawals understood exactly how financial monitoring systems worked, or they were married to someone who did. Renee spent the next week digging deeper into SCM Holdings and the two other entities she'd found connected to Darnell's name in Georgia and North Carolina corporate filings. She called me on a Friday afternoon while I was sitting in my car in the Meridian Advisory parking lot, not yet ready to go inside and pretend everything was normal.
Simone,
She said,
there's a second LLC, Carolina Distribution Partners, registered in Mecklenburg County, formed 7 months after SCM Holdings. Your name is on that one too.
I pressed my head back against the headrest. Same signature, I asked.
Same signature.
She said.
And a third one, just a trade name registration, not a full LLC, but still tied to Darnell's contact information. He's been building this for at least 2 years.
2 years. While I was making Maya's lunches and working 60-hour audit cycles and paying the mortgage on a house that had my name on the deed and his fingerprints on everything inside it, I went into work that morning and sat at my desk and opened my compliance software and stared at a spreadsheet for 45 minutes without processing a single number. Jerry Hutchins walked past my office, looked in, and stopped. "You doing okay?" he asked. "I'll be fine," I said. He stood in the doorway a moment longer. I shouldn't have mentioned that LLC thing the way I did. If I stirred something up. "Jerry," I looked at him directly, "I need to ask you something and I need you to be straight with me." He came in, closed the door. "Did you pull that filing because you were curious?" I said. "Or because something in your work flagged it?" He sat down across from me, folded his hands. "A cross-reference audit I ran 3 months ago pulled SCM Holdings because of its connection to Meridian Capital Partners' loan portfolio. Your name showing up as a guarantor on a loan of that size, I flagged it internally as something to monitor. I thought it was a disclosure issue on your end. A conflict of interest you hadn't reported." "It wasn't a disclosure issue," I said. "It was a forgery." Jerry didn't move for a long moment. Then he said, "Simone, if that's true, if your signature was forged on documents connected to a Meridian Capital loan, that's not just a marital issue. That's wire fraud. That's identity theft. That's a federal matter." "I know," I said. "You need to be careful," he said quietly. "Very careful about how you move from here." I nodded. I thanked him. He left. And then Darnell started his campaign. That's the only word for it. A campaign. Systematic. Patient. Designed to make sure that by the time any of this came to light, the people around me would already believe I was unstable. It started with my mother. Darnell called her, I found out later, on a Sunday afternoon while I was at the grocery store. He told her I had been under enormous stress at work, that I had been saying things that didn't make sense, that he was worried about me, that he thought I might need to talk to someone. My mother, who loved Darnell, who had trusted Darnell for 11 years, called me that evening with a gentleness in her voice that broke my heart because I could hear that she had already half believed him. "Baby, are you doing okay? Really okay?" "Mama, I'm fine." Darnell said you've been... "Mama." I stopped, took a breath. "I can't explain everything right now. But please, please don't take what he tells you about me at face value. Please." She was quiet for too long. Simone, he seemed genuinely worried. I got off the phone before I said something I couldn't take back. Then it was our friends. Marcus and Deja, the couple we'd done everything with for 7 years. Barbecues, New Year's, Maya's birthday parties. Darnell had dinner with Marcus while I was working late one Thursday. I don't know exactly what was said, but the following weekend when I called Deja to ask if she wanted to grab coffee, there was something careful and distant in her voice that had never been there before. "Everything okay with you and Darnell?" she asked. "Why," I said. A pause. "He just seemed really concerned about you when he talked to Marcus. Said you've been going through some things." I hung up and sat on the edge of my bed and felt the walls closing in from every direction. Then came the evening that I replay in my mind more than any other from that period. A Wednesday. Darnell came home late after 9 and I was in the living room waiting. Maya was asleep. I had spent the past 3 hours looking at bank statements and corporate filings, and I was exhausted and frightened and furious all at once. And when he walked through the door, something in me cracked open just enough to let it show. "We need to talk," I said. He set his keys down, looked at me.
I just got home, Simone.
"I know." And I've been sitting here for 3 hours looking at what you've done to our finances, and I need you to...
Here we go.
Darnell.
You know what?
He turned to face me fully.
I have been patient with this. I have tried to be understanding, but I am tired of coming home to accusations from a woman who is clearly...
He stopped, shook his head slowly.
Not well.
The word landed like a stone dropped into still water. I am completely well, I said quietly.
Nobody's going to believe you,
he said. His voice was flat, certain, almost gentle in its cruelty.
You're hysterical. You're always hysterical. You know what people see when they look at you right now? They see a woman who's losing it. And I've been telling them that for weeks.
He said it like a man who had already won. Then he said the thing that made my blood run cold.
Keisha never questions me,
he said. The name dropped into the room like something he'd been holding back and decided in that moment to release.
Keisha never accuses me. She never makes me feel like a suspect in my own house.
He paused. Let that settle.
Maybe that's why I go to her.
I stared at him. He stared back. And then, and this is the part I will never forget for as long as I live, he smiled. Not a cruel smile. Not an angry smile. A satisfied smile. The smile of someone who had just laid down a card they'd been holding for a long time and enjoyed watching it land.
You drove me there, Simone.
He said.
You need to think about that.
He walked upstairs. I sat on the couch and I did not move for a very long time. From upstairs, I heard the soft sound of Maya's bedroom door opening. She'd woken up, probably heard voices, and then her small feet in the hallway, and then silence as she stood at the top of the stairs and listened to whatever was left of the quiet below. She was 9 years old and she was already learning what it sounded like when a house was breaking. That was the night something shifted in me for the first time. Not all the way. Not yet. But enough. I picked up my phone. Texted Renee 3 words. He said her name.
Come in tomorrow. We need to move faster.
Renee had found the apartment. That was the first thing she told me when I walked into her office the next morning. She had a Google Maps screenshot printed out and placed in the center of her conference table, like evidence at a crime scene, because that's exactly what it was. A luxury apartment complex in Buckhead, Atlanta. The Reverie at Peachtree. Monthly rent $3,400. Lease signed under the name of SCM Holdings, LLC. Tenant of record Keisha Van. I sat down slowly.
She's been living there for 18 months,
Renee said.
Rent paid on time every single month directly from the SCM Holdings operating account, which was funded by the Meridian Capital loan. The loan that has your name on it as personal guarantor.
I heard every word. I processed every word. And I felt something in my chest not breaking exactly. More like a controlled demolition. The kind where the engineers place the charges precisely so the building comes straight down instead of falling sideways into something else. He's been paying her rent, I said, with money he borrowed under my name.
For a year and a half,
Renee said. I looked at the photograph of the building. Glass and steel and a fountain out front. Nice. Real nice.
There's more,
Renee said. She slid another document across the table. I picked it up. It was a consultation intake form from a family law firm in Charlotte Hargrove and Associates. Date of first consultation 8 months ago. Client name Darnell Marcus Carver. Matter type divorce proceedings. He had been planning this for 8 months.
His attorney's strategy,
Renee said, her voice carefully measured.
Based on what I've been able to piece together through professional channels, is to position you as the financially responsible party for the LLC debts. He'll argue you were an active member of SCM Holdings, that you signed the documents knowingly that the loans were taken out with your full participation. He'll use the forged signatures, which closely resemble yours, to make that argument.
He's going to use my own name to bankrupt me, I said.
And take Maya,
Renee said quietly.
His petition is going to include a request for primary custody based on claims of your emotional instability. He's been building that narrative for weeks with your mother, with your friends, probably with Maya's school.
Maya's school. I thought about Maya's teacher, Ms. Patterson, a warm woman in her early 40s who had taught 3rd grade at Rama Road Elementary for 15 years. I thought about a conversation I'd had with her 2 weeks earlier at pickup, when Ms. Patterson had said with a careful kindness that I hadn't understood at the time, "Mrs. Carver, is everything okay at home? Maya mentioned that things have been a little tense." I had said yes. Everything was fine. Just a busy season at work. Darnell had gotten there first. I sat in Renee's office and I looked at the lease agreement and the divorce consultation form and the loan documents with my forged signature, and I understood completely finally, with every analytical tool I had spent 15 years developing, exactly what had been built around me while I was paying the mortgage and making lunches and trusting the man sleeping next to me. This was not a husband who had strayed. This was not a marriage that had drifted. This was a calculated multi-year financial scheme, and I was both the instrument and the intended victim. That night I went home and I did the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. I acted normal. I made dinner, jerk chicken rice and green beans, Maya's favorite. I helped Maya with her homework. I laughed at something on television. I said goodnight to Darnell like a woman who had no idea what was coming. Because the worst thing I could do, the absolute worst strategic move I could make, was let him know that I knew the full scope of it. If he knew, he would accelerate. He would move money. He would file first. He would get to Maya's school, to my mother, to every person who might be called as a witness before I had a single piece of protection in place. So I smiled, and I waited. But on the inside, I was building. 2 nights later, Darnell came home in a mood I recognized, the loose, expansive mood he got when something had gone well for him. He poured himself a drink, sat at the kitchen island, and started talking about a new business opportunity he was vague about in the way he was always vague when he didn't want questions. I sat across from him, and I listened and I nodded. And then, because the mood was right and his guard was down, and because some part of me needed to hear what he would say, I asked, "Are we okay, Darnell? You and me, are we okay?" He looked at me. Something moved behind his eyes, a calculation so fast it was almost invisible. Then he reached across the island and covered my hand with his.
"We're fine, babe,"
he said.
"Everything's fine."
He smiled at me. The same smile from the rooftop party 12 years ago. Warm, easy, completely convincing. And then he said,
"You worry too much. That's always been your problem."
I smiled back. Later that night, I heard him on the second phone. The company issued one he kept in the nightstand, talking in a low voice behind the closed bathroom door. I couldn't make out the words, but I heard him laugh. Soft and private, the way you laugh with someone you feel completely safe with. I lay in the dark and I listened to that laugh and I thought, enjoy it. 2 days later, everything exploded. I had gone to bed early, genuinely exhausted, the kind of bone-deep tired that comes from carrying a secret that heavy for that long. I had left my phone on the kitchen counter, charging. At some point in the night, I woke up and went downstairs for water. Darnell was standing in the kitchen. He had my phone in his hand. Unlocked. Open. He had the photographs of the loan documents on the screen. For a single frozen second, we looked at each other across the kitchen. Then I said very quietly, "Put my phone down." He looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen.
"How long have you had these?"
He said. "Put my phone down." He set it on the counter, but he didn't step back. He stepped forward.
"You've been going through my things,"
he said.
"You broke into my lockbox."
"You forged my signature on a federal loan document," I said.
"I told you signed those papers."
"Stop." My voice came out harder than I intended. "Stop lying to me. I am a financial compliance analyst. I have spent 15 years authenticating signatures on legal documents. That is not my signature, and we both know it." Something shifted in his face. The pretense fell away. Just for a moment, just long enough for me to see what was underneath it. He wasn't scared. He wasn't sorry. He was calculating.
"You want to do this?"
he said. His voice had gone quiet. Dangerous quiet.
"Fine. Let's do this. You go ahead and try to fight me, Simone. I will make sure you lose everything, the house, the car.
He leaned forward just slightly.
And I will take Maya. I will make sure every person in that courtroom believes you are an unstable, paranoid woman who manufactured a financial conspiracy because she couldn't handle her husband being more successful than her."
You are not more successful than me, I said. You are more fraudulent than me. There's a difference. His jaw tightened. I picked up my phone from the counter, turned toward the hallway.
You don't have a voice in this marriage, Simone?
He said behind me.
You never did.
I stopped walking, stood still for just a moment. Then I heard a small sound from the top of the stairs, a shift of weight on the landing. I looked up. Maya was standing there in her pajamas, the ones with the little sea turtles on them, her eyes wide and dark and taking in everything. I looked at my daughter, my 9-year-old daughter who wanted to be a marine biologist and had a poster of the ocean on her ceiling. She had heard every word. Darnell followed my gaze, saw Maya, and something crossed his face that I can only describe as irritation, not shame, not guilt, not the instinct of a father caught behaving badly in front of his child. Irritation, like she was an inconvenience.
Go back to bed, Maya,
he said. Maya didn't move. She looked at me.
Mommy!
Go back to your room, baby, I said gently. I'll come up in a minute. She went. Darnell poured himself a glass of water like the conversation was over. I walked to my home office, closed the door, opened my laptop. My hands were shaking now, finally properly shaking, but I opened my email anyway. My work email, the one with the Meridian advisory domain, the one Darnell had no idea existed. I had been building this email for 3 weeks. Draft by draft, attachment by attachment, every document photographed and organized into a single compressed folder, the loan agreement, the LLC filings, the forged signatures, the bank statements showing the withdrawals, the cross-reference audit notes. Jerry had given me the lease for Keisha's apartment, everything. I added the recipients. First Renee, her personal email and her firm email both. Then I typed 2 more addresses. The first was the IRS Whistleblower Office secure submission portal, the same one I had helped a client navigate 2 years earlier during a corporate fraud case. The second was the compliance officer at Meridian Capital Partners, the lending firm that had issued the $312,000 loan. The officer whose contact information I had found in 30 seconds because I worked in the same industry and I knew exactly where to look. I wrote the subject line, "Everything. Tonight, don't wait." I attached the folder. I looked at the screen for a long moment. From upstairs, I could hear the faint sound of Darnell's footsteps in our bedroom, the creak of the mattress as he got back into bed. The man who had just told me I had no voice in my own marriage settling in for a comfortable night's sleep. I pressed send. Then I stood up, walked upstairs, went to Maya's room, and lay down next to her on her narrow bed with the ocean poster above us, and I held my daughter until she fell asleep. I did not sleep at all. But for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid. I want to tell you what it feels like to stop being afraid. It doesn't feel like courage. Not at first. It feels like something quieter than that, like a frequency that was always there, but that you couldn't hear over the noise of everything else. And then one morning, the noise stops, and you can hear it clearly. And it says enough. That was the morning after I pressed send. I got up at 5:47 a.m. Maya was still asleep next to me, her arm thrown over my waist, her breathing slow and even. I lay there for a moment and looked at the ocean poster on her ceiling, all that deep blue, all that open water, and I thought, we are going to be fine. Not eventually. Not someday. We are going to be fine because I am going to make sure of it. I got up, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table while the house was still dark and still quiet, and I opened my laptop and I read back through the email I had sent the night before. Every attachment was there, every document, every number, organized the way I organized everything by date, by entity, by transaction type. 17 months of evidence compressed into a folder that told the complete story of what Darnell Marcus Carver had built under my name while I was busy trusting him. I closed the laptop. Darnell came downstairs at 7. I was standing at the stove making eggs. "Morning," I said. He stopped in the kitchen doorway, looked at me. He was trying to read me. I could see it, the slight narrowing of his eyes, the pause before he responded.
Morning,
he said finally. He poured his coffee. I plated the eggs. We moved around each other in that kitchen like two people who had agreed without words to pretend that the night before had not happened. It was the most surreal 12 minutes of my life. When he left for work, I stood at the kitchen window and watched his car back out of the driveway. I watched until the taillights disappeared around the corner of Briar Creek Road. Then I called Renee. She picked up on the first ring. She had been awake since 4.
I got everything,
she said immediately.
all of it. Simone, this is extraordinary documentation. You built this like a case file.
It is a case file, I said.
I need you to come in today. And I need you to bring Jerry Hutchins if he's willing.
Jerry was willing. He had been willing since the moment I'd said the word forgery in his office because Jerry Hutchins had spent 31 years in financial compliance and had exactly 0 tolerance for people who used the system against the people the system was supposed to protect. He came in that afternoon in his brown cardigan with a printed copy of his cross-reference audit and sat across from Renee's conference table like a man who had been waiting for this meeting. I can testify to the cross-reference findings, he said. The SCM Holdings loan appeared in our monitoring system as a conflict of interest flag because of Simone's employment at Meridian Advisory Group. If her signature was forged on that loan documentation, then the loan was obtained fraudulently using her professional identity as collateral. That's a significant finding. Renee nodded.
And you'd be willing to put that in a sworn statement?
Already drafted it, Jerry said. He slid a folder across the table. I looked at him. Jerry, you didn't have to. I've known you for 6 years, he said simply. Numbers don't lie. Neither do I. 3 days after I sent the email, Renee received a call. She told me about it that evening, her voice carefully neutral in the way it got when she was managing her own reaction so she could manage mine. The call was from a woman named Tasha Monroe, Special Agent Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigation Division, Charlotte Field Office.
She confirmed receipt of the whistleblower submission,
Renee said.
Simone, they had already opened a preliminary inquiry on SCM Holdings 6 weeks ago, unrelated to your submission initially. A routine audit flag on the Meridian Capital loan portfolio. Your email gave them the documentation they needed to connect the fraud directly to Darnell.
I sat down on my bed. They were already looking at him.
They were already looking at the loan,
Renee said.
Your submission told them who forged the signatures and how the money was moved. Agent Monroe wants to meet with you, formally, as a cooperating witness.
I pressed my hand flat against my knee to steady it. Okay, I said.
Simone?
Renee paused.
This is bigger than a divorce now. You understand that?
It was always bigger than a divorce, I said. I just needed the paperwork to prove it. I met with Agent Tasha Monroe the following Tuesday at Renee's office. She was a compact woman in her early 40s, natural hair, gray suit, the kind of stillness about her that came from years of sitting across from people who were lying and knowing it. She shook my hand, sat down, opened a notebook, and looked at me with a directness that I found immediately steadying.
Mrs. Carver,
She said,
I've reviewed your submission. I want to go through each document with you and have you verify your recollection of when and how you obtained it.
We spent 4 hours in that conference room. I walked her through everything, the Georgia SOS, filing the hotel receipt, the lockbox documents, the bank statements, the lease for Keisha's apartment. I explained the signature discrepancy in the E of Elaine. I explained how I knew the withdrawals were structured to avoid monitoring thresholds. Agent Monroe asked precise, quiet questions. She wrote things down in a small, careful script. At the end, she closed her notebook and said,
You're a compliance analyst.
15 years, I said. She almost smiled.
It shows.
Meanwhile, Darnell had no idea any of this was happening. He was living in our house, sleeping in our bed, and operating with the complete confidence of a man who believed he had already won. He had filed his divorce petition the week after the kitchen confrontation. I received the papers on a Thursday afternoon delivered to my office by a process server, which was a deliberate humiliation designed to rattle me in my professional environment. It didn't rattle me. I scanned every page, forwarded it to Renee, and went back to work. But Darnell wasn't finished, because Darnell never knew when to stop. That same week, I got a call from Ms. Patterson at Rama Road Elementary. Mrs. Carver, she said, her voice careful, I want you to know Mr. Carver came in yesterday to speak with me and the school counselor. He expressed concern about Maya's home environment and mentioned that you had been under significant emotional strain. I want you to know that I take these conversations seriously, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak with me directly. I closed my office door. Ms. Patterson, I said, I appreciate you calling me. I want to be transparent with you. My husband and I are going through a divorce. He is attempting to establish a narrative about my mental stability that is not grounded in reality. If you have any concerns about Maya's well-being, I welcome a formal meeting. But I would ask that you consider the source of the information you've been given. A pause. Then, I appreciate you being direct with me, Mrs. Carver. Let's schedule that meeting. I hung up, sat back in my chair, breathed. He had gone to her school. He had stood in the hallway of my daughter's elementary school and planted seeds of doubt about me with the woman who spent 6 hours a day with my child. I wrote it down, added it to the file, told Renee.
Document everything.
Renee said,
Every call, every conversation, dates and times. It all goes into the record.
I know, I said.
How are you holding up?
I thought about Maya that morning, how she'd eaten her cereal and told me about a dream she'd had about swimming with whale sharks, completely earnest, completely alive, completely unbroken, despite everything happening around her. I'm holding up fine, I said, because I have to. The divorce petition listed 17 claims against me. Emotional instability, financial irresponsibility, unsuitability as a primary caregiver. It was a document designed to dismantle me, built from months of quiet, deliberate groundwork. I read through all 17 claims the night I received it alone at my kitchen table, a cup of tea going cold beside me. Then I set it down. Then I opened my laptop and I started building our response. Claim by claim, document by document, number by number, the way I always worked. The way I had always worked. Something inside me went quiet that night, I told Renee later. Not sad quiet, not defeated quiet, dangerous quiet. The next 3 months were the most disciplined of my life. I want you to understand what discipline looks like when everything you love is on the line. It looks like waking up at 5 every morning and spending 90 minutes on case preparation before Maya woke up for school. It looks like sitting across a dinner table from the man who had forged your signature and stolen your savings, and smiled while doing it and asking him how his day was. It looks like never letting him see a single crack. Not one. Because the moment he saw a crack, he would move. And I could not let him move before I was ready. Renee and I met twice a week, sometimes at her office, sometimes at her house after Maya was asleep, sometimes on the phone at 11 at night going through the response to each of his 17 claims, line by line. We had Jerry's sworn statement. We had Agent Monroe's confirmation that the federal investigation was active and proceeding. We had the forged signature analysis from a certified forensic document examiner that Renee had retained a woman out of Raleigh who had testified in federal court 14 times and whose findings were unambiguous. The signatures on all 3 LLC documents were not produced by Simone Elaine Carver. Not a match. Not even close under analysis. I had also quietly and carefully opened a new personal bank account at a credit union across town, separate from every account Darnell knew about. My direct deposit had been redirected 4 weeks earlier. My emergency fund $23,000 I had been building in a personal savings account. He had never known about money. I had been setting aside since year 3 of our marriage, with the vague, unexamined feeling that a woman should always have something that was entirely her own, was untouched. My mother used to say, keep something in your own name, baby. Always. I had listened. I just hadn't known how much I would need to have listened. I had also spoken to Maya's pediatrician, Dr. Anita Chambers, who had been Maya's doctor since birth. I explained what was happening in the most measured terms I could manage. Dr. Chambers listened, asked careful questions, and documented our conversation in Maya's medical record. She also referred Maya to a child therapist, a gentle patient woman named Dr. Sandra Webb, who specialized in children navigating family transitions, and Maya had been seeing her weekly for 6 weeks. Maya called her Dr. Sandy and said she smelled like vanilla and let her draw pictures while they talked. Maya was going to be okay. I was making sure of it. What I didn't know, what I was deliberately kept from knowing for legal reasons, Agent Monroe explained carefully, was the full scope of what the IRS investigation had uncovered independently. What I did know was that Agent Monroe had requested my presence at a meeting 3 weeks before the trial date, and that at the end of that meeting she had looked at me and said,
Mrs. Carver, I want you to be in that courtroom on October 24th. I can't tell you more than that right now, but I want you there.
I told Renee. Renee looked at me for a long moment.
Simone, whatever she's found, it's bigger than what we have.
I nodded.
Are you ready for that?
I've been ready, I said, since the night he smashed my phone. Meanwhile, Darnell was living his best life. I observed this with a kind of cold, almost clinical detachment that I think only becomes possible when you have fully committed to a course of action and there is nothing left to do but wait. He was confident, expansive. He had moved into the guest bedroom, his choice presented as a courtesy, and he operated in our house like a man who was already mentally somewhere else. He took calls in the backyard. He dressed well. He started going to the gym every morning at 6. He thought he had already won. The dinner happened on a Saturday evening 3 weeks before trial. Darnell's mother, Diane Carver, a tall, sharp-featured woman from Greensboro, who had always treated me with a politeness that had just enough frost in it to let me know it was politeness, and nothing more came to dinner. And Darnell's college friend, Reginald, and his wife, Tamara, who had been part of our social circle for years. I cooked. Of course I cooked. Braised short ribs, roasted sweet potatoes, collard greens. The kind of meal that takes 4 hours and fills the whole house with a smell that means everything is fine, everything is warm, everything is as it should be. Darnell held court at the head of the table the way he always did when he had an audience. Charming, funny, generous with the wine. And then as the evening loosened, he said something that I have stored in a specific compartment of my memory that I labeled Exhibit A in the case of his own character. He was talking about the divorce casually, like it was a minor administrative matter, and he said to Reginald with a laugh that invited everyone at the table to laugh along.
She thought she was going to come at me with some numbers. Spreadsheets.
He shook his head with fond exasperation like he was talking about a child who had tried to argue with a grown-up.
Baby, I've been running business circles around you since before you knew what a balance sheet was.
Reginald laughed. Tamara looked at her plate. Diane smiled at her son like he had said something charming. I was sitting 4 feet away. I looked up from my plate. I looked at Darnell. He met my eyes, and in his eyes was the thing I had seen in the kitchen that night. The thing underneath the charm, the calculation, the satisfaction of a man who had been sloppy enough to let me see exactly who he was. More sweet potatoes, I said. He blinked, then grinned.
See, that's what I love about her.
He said to Reginald.
Unflappable.
I smiled. Passed the dish. Said nothing. Let him enjoy his last few days of feeling powerful, I thought. Let him. Later that night, after the guests had gone and Maya was asleep and Darnell was watching television in the guest room, I sat at my desk and I reviewed the trial preparation file one last time. Renee had structured our case in 3 layers. The first layer was the divorce itself, the financial fraud, the forged signatures, the drained savings account, the LLC debts that Darnell had tried to anchor to my name. The second layer was the custody argument, Jerry's testimony, Dr. Chambers' documentation, Dr. Webb's assessment of Maya's stability under my care, Ms. Patterson's formal statement retracting the concerns Darnell had planted. The third layer was something Renee had added quietly to the file 2 weeks earlier after a conversation with Agent Monroe that she described only as significant. The third layer had no documents in it yet, just a note in Renee's handwriting. TM 10/24 Courtroom. Tasha Monroe. October 24th. The courtroom. I closed the file, turned off my desk lamp, sat in the dark for a moment. Then I got up and I went to check on Maya. She was asleep on her back, one arm stretched out toward the nightstand, the ocean poster above her glowing faintly in the light from the hallway. I stood in the doorway and I watched her breathe for a long moment. "We are going to be more than okay," I whispered. Then I went to my room, Put on my navy blue suit, the one I had bought specifically for October 24th, pressed it, hung it on the back of the door where I would see it first thing in the morning. Set my alarm for 5. Lay down. Closed my eyes. In the guest room down the hall, Darnell's phone buzzed with a notification. I heard him laugh, soft, private, comfortable. The laugh of a man with no idea what was walking toward him. The night before the trial, he sent me a text at 10:43 p.m.
Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day for you.
I read it. Set the phone face down on the nightstand. Thought you have no idea. Closed my eyes. And for the first time in 11 months, I slept through the entire night. October 24th, Charlotte, North Carolina, 9:15 a.m. Courtroom 4, B, Mecklenburg County Courthouse. I was sitting at the plaintiff's table in my navy blue suit when Darnell walked in. He was wearing charcoal gray new suit, fitted the suit of a man who had dressed for victory. He sat down next to Bradford Ellis, his attorney, and the first thing he did was look across the room at me and smile. That big, easy, I already won smile. I looked down at my watch. 9:47, still 22 minutes away. I folded my hands on top of my folder and I waited. Bradford Ellis opened for the respondent. He was smooth and unhurried, and he used the word unstable 4 times in 11 minutes. He built his picture carefully, a woman who had co-signed business loans. She now conveniently claimed not to remember a woman whose own husband had been forced reluctantly to seek protection for himself and their daughter. He was good. I will give him that. And then he turned toward our table and gestured at me with one open hand.
The respondent would submit your honor that Mrs. Carver has no legitimate claim to these assets, no foundation for these allegations. No case.
From across the room, Darnell leaned back in his chair. He looked directly at me.
She has nothing.
He said quietly.
She is nothing.
Peak confidence. Peak arrogance. The very top of the mountain he had been climbing for 2 years. I checked my watch. 9:47 a.m. Right on schedule. Renee stood up. She was methodical and precise, and completely without drama, which was the most devastating possible way to dismantle a man like Darnell Carver. Exhibit 1, the forensic document analysis certified finding that the signatures on all 3 LLC documents were not mine. Exhibit 2, the bank records showing 14 months of structured withdrawals from our joint savings. Exhibit 3, the lease for Keisha Van's Buckhead apartment paid monthly from the SCM Holdings account. Exhibit 4, Jerry Hutchins' sworn statement. Exhibit 5, Dr. Webb's assessment of Maya's stability under my care. With each exhibit, I watched Bradford Ellis' composure erode. With each exhibit, I watched Darnell's face. The smile left somewhere around Exhibit 3. What replaced it was the controlled calculation I had seen in the kitchen. He was still managing, still thinking, still convinced he had something left to play. He didn't know about the third layer. The courtroom doors opened at 10:29 a.m.
Agent Tasha Monroe walked in.
Charcoal suit. 2 agents flanking her. She moved with the particular authority of someone who had been building toward this moment for 11 months. She presented credentials to the clerk and handed a sealed document to Judge Owens. The room went completely silent. Judge Owens read the document. Once. Then again. Then she looked up over her glasses.
This court will note the entry of a federal arrest warrant for Darnell Marcus Carver on charges of wire fraud, identity theft, and loan fraud under federal statute. The warrant was issued by the United States District Court for the Western District of North Carolina based on an 11-month investigation initiated by a whistleblower submission received by the IRS Criminal Investigation Division.
She set the document down.
Mr. Carver, please stand.
And that is when I watched him fall apart. The color drained from his face like someone had pulled a plug. I watched it go from the jaw first, then up through his cheeks, until what was left was a grayish, hollow version of the confident man who had walked in 45 minutes ago. His hands went flat on the table to push himself up, and they were shaking, visibly, unmistakably shaking. The same hands that had smashed my phone against the kitchen floor, trembling now against polished wood. He tried to speak. What came out was fractured, unrecognizable.
This is a mistake. There's been a mistake.
Mr. Carver, Judge Owens said, Stand up, please.
His knees buckled getting up. He grabbed the table's edge with both hands, sweat visible on his forehead. Catching the light from the east windows, the new suit that had looked like victory an hour ago now looked like a costume on the wrong man.
Renee stood. In her clear attorney's voice, she said, Your Honor, the petitioner would like the court to note that the whistleblower submission referenced in that warrant was filed 11 months ago, the same night Mr. Carver destroyed Mrs. Carver's personal property to prevent her from communicating with legal counsel. He believed that by smashing her phone, he had silenced her. A beat? He did not know she had already sent the email.
Judge Owens looked at me over her glasses for a moment. Something moved across her face, not quite a smile, adjacent to one. Agent Monroe crossed the room. The handcuffs came out. Then Darnell looked at me, really looked at me, without calculation, without management, without performance. Just a man standing in the wreckage of everything he had built.
Simone. His voice cracked on my name. Please, I'm sorry. We can fix this. You know I love you. Please.
I stood up, smoothed my jacket, looked at him across the courtroom. Remember when you told me I didn't have a voice in this marriage? I said. Quiet, steady. That email was my voice, Darnell. Every document, every signature you forged, every dollar you took. 11 months of my voice sent to every person who needed to hear it. He started to say something else. You're not sorry, I said. You're not sorry for the forged signatures. You're not sorry for the stolen savings. You're not sorry for the night you smashed my phone while our daughter stood at the top of the stairs and listened to everything. I held his gaze one last time. You're sorry you got caught. That's all you've ever been sorry for. The handcuffs clicked. I picked up my briefcase, turned toward the door. Behind me, I heard his voice, broken, nothing left of it, calling my name one final time. I did not turn around. In the back row, Diane Carver sat with her hands folded and her eyes fixed on the middle distance. She did not look at her son as they led him out. She did not look at me. She had known about SCM Holdings from the beginning, had stayed silent, and now her own name was in the investigation file, and her attorney had told her to say nothing to anyone. Keisha Van sat in the gallery and watched Darnell be handcuffed without moving a muscle. She had told Agent Monroe everything 3 months earlier, the moment she understood that every promise Darnell had made her was a management strategy. He had told her he would leave his wife, that the apartment was a gift, that she was the one he truly loved. She had been a tool, same as me, just a different kind. I walked out into the corridor. The morning light came through the tall windows in long, golden strips across the marble floor. Renee came out beside me.
You okay?
She said. I breathed in, breathed out. For the first time in 11 months, the air felt different. Lighter, like something that had been pressing down from the inside had finally completely let go. I will be, I said, and I meant it with everything I had. 6 months later, late April, a Saturday morning. The light coming through the kitchen window of our new apartment is the soft gold of a Carolina spring, the kind that makes everything look washed clean overnight. Maya is at the table behind me eating cereal and telling me about bioluminescent organisms in the deep ocean, her voice animated and certain and completely entirely herself. I am standing at the stove making eggs. I am smiling. Not because everything is perfect. Not because the past year didn't leave marks. I'm smiling because this kitchen, this small, bright kitchen in our 2-bedroom apartment in Noda, 4 miles from Briar Creek Road, is mine. Every dish in the cabinet, every plant on the windowsill, every crayon drawing taped to the refrigerator door. Nobody's name is on this lease but mine. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks after the trial. Judge Owens awarded me full primary custody of Maya with supervised visitation for Darnell pending his federal case outcome. The house on Briar Creek Road was awarded to me as primary mortgage holder. I put it on the market 3 weeks later. Some houses hold too much of what happened inside them, and I had learned by then that choosing a clean start over a familiar one is not weakness. It is wisdom. The sale closed in February. $118,000 in equity after the remaining mortgage. Half went into Maya's college fund. The other half into a personal investment account I manage myself because I am a financial compliance analyst and I know exactly how to make money grow. Darnell's federal case was proceeding through the Western District Court. Wire fraud identity, theft loan fraud, a combined maximum of 20 years. His attorney had entered a not guilty plea. Agent Monroe had described this development to Renee with a single raised eyebrow that communicated everything necessary. The evidence was substantial. I had been told I might be called as a witness. I told Renee whenever they need me, I will be there. SCM Holdings and Carolina Distribution Partners had both been dissolved by court order. The $312,000 debt had been formally attributed to Darnell as the fraudulent actor. I had been cleared of all financial liability. My name, which he had used as a weapon for 2 years, had been returned to me. Diane Carver had cooperated with the federal investigation in exchange for limited immunity. We had not spoken since the day of the trial. I did not call her. I did not block her. I simply left that door exactly where she had left it closed. The first custody exchange happened in December, a McDonald's parking lot on South Boulevard. A social worker present. Darnell looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, but the largeness was gone. The expansiveness. The quality that had filled rooms for 11 years. He tried to say something that started with, "I never meant," I said calmly. "The social worker is here to facilitate the exchange. That's all we need from each other today." He stopped talking. Maya got into my car and buckled her seatbelt. As I pulled out of the parking lot, she looked out the window for a moment, then looked at me.
"Mommy,"
she said.
"I'm glad we live in the new apartment."
"Me too, baby," I said. "Me too." There are things this story cost me that I don't speak about as loudly as the things I gained. My friendship with Deja didn't recover. She called once after the trial to apologize. I told her I understood and I meant it. But some bridges, once they've held the wrong weight, don't carry the same traffic anymore. I wish her well. From a distance. My mother and I spent 3 months rebuilding careful, honest conversations, some on the phone, some at her kitchen table in the West End with coffee going cold between us. She told me she should have listened to her own instincts about Darnell years earlier. That something had always felt slightly off, but she'd told herself she was imagining it because he was charming and she wanted me to be happy. "Mama," I told her, "he fooled me for 11 years. You don't owe yourself an apology for 6. She squeezed my hand across the table. We were okay after that. Better than okay. Jerry Hutchins retired in March. 31 years at Meridian Advisory. The same brown cardigan to the very last day. At his retirement lunch, I stood up and said the thing I meant most completely, that there are people who at the moment it matters most simply tell the truth. No calculation. No self-interest. Just the truth. And that those people are rarer than anything. He waved me off embarrassed exactly the way I knew he would. I was promoted to Director of Financial Compliance in February. The promotion had been building for years. My record, my work, 15 years of findings. But I will not pretend it didn't mean something different to receive it on the other side of everything. To sit in that office with my name on the door and hear his voice in the back of my mind, nothing but a calculator in a dress, and look at that nameplate and think, look at the calculator now. Renee and I had dinner last week at the restaurant on East Boulevard where we used to eat in our 20s. Same table. Same shrimp and grits. 3 hours of conversation that covered everything and nothing the way only old friendships can. At some point, she looked at me and said,
"You saved yourself, Simone."
I thought about the email, about sitting at my laptop in the dark while Darnell slept comfortably down the hall, the man who had just told me I had no voice settling in for a comfortable night. About pressing send on 17 pages of truth and then walking upstairs to lie down next to my daughter under the ocean poster. I had help, I said.
"You did the work first," Renee said. "The help showed up because of that."
He smashed my phone to silence me. He told me I had no voice. He built a 2-year scheme around my name, my signature, my professional identity, my trust, and he slept beside me while he did it and smiled while he did it and believed with the full weight of his arrogance that I would not know how to fight back. He forgot who I was. I am a woman who has spent 15 years finding what doesn't add up. I know that the truth always lives in the details. I know that when someone takes away your phone, you still have a laptop and a work email and 15 years of training and one best friend who answers a text in under 2 minutes at 11 o'clock at night. He gave me one night to be silent. I used it to send the email that ended him. This morning, Maya pushed back from the table and said she wanted the library she was reading about the Mariana Trench and needed the next book in the series. I turned off the stove, grabbed my keys, watched her pull on her yellow jacket with the little whale patch I'd sewn onto the pocket myself. She looked up at me with her father's smile and my stubbornness and her own completely particular light.
Ready, Mommy?
Ready, baby. We walked out into the April morning. The air smelled like cut grass and something blooming I couldn't name. Maya took my hand without thinking about it, 9 years old and still reaching for my hand. And I held it and I thought, this is what I protected. This exact thing. This hand in mine. My name is Simone Elaine Carver. I am 38 years old. And I am the woman who sent one email and changed everything. Not because I was fearless. Because I was terrified and I pressed send anyway. Not because I was powerful. Because I understood that the truth properly documented is the most powerful thing there is. And not because I was alone. Because I had a daughter watching me from the top of the stairs, and I refused, absolutely refused to let her watch me lose. If this story reached something in you, if you have ever been told you don't have a voice, or had someone use your own name against you, I want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because every week I bring you stories about women who refuse to stay down. Stay strong. Stay smart. And always, always keep something in your own name.